Welcome back, everybody, to this week's episode of the DCL Duo Podcast, brought to you by My Path Unwinding Travel. Sam, we got a repeat guest coming back on. I thought that the last time we had talked to John was about the Big Red Boat, but he corrected me. We had talked to him before about Aulani the last time, and he noted this would be his third show appearance without directly talking about some sort of recent Disney Cruise Line cruise. And nonetheless, we're excited to have him back, right?
Absolutely. John, it is so good to see you, to have you back on the show. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and great to see you guys.
Yeah, you too. And thank you for all of your tips, of course, for Aulani.
Yes.
As you know, we are now Aulani converts. We now own Aulani via DVC, and we are obsessed with all things Aulani, including Duffy, my favorite bear. So
there you go.
And what about Duffy's friend Olu, right?
Yes.
I do love me some Olumel as well. I will tell you that Nathan has two different Duffy stuffies, a Shelly May stuffy and an Olumel stuffy as well. There are more characters, but we don't have those.
So you have Aulani, but what about the new Disneyland DVC?
Oh gosh, that's a Patreon episode for another day. We were
maybe a point counterpoint episode. Maybe we bring it back for a point counterpoint.
I will just summarize it by saying we were all in on buying the villas at the Disneyland Hotel, and after all of the announcements around pricing and the taxes and all that stuff, even though the math all works out, I am not a buyer any longer.
We're sour.
$230 a point when I paid $225 for a Grand Cal. That's a chunk of money that I don't know that I'm willing to spend at the moment. So we may hold out for resale. Yeah.
Let me say we're willing to spend it, but we're willing to spend it on sailing on Disney Cruise Line instead, maybe of Disneyland Hotel.
Dear Disney, how about a DVC cruise ship? There you go. Actually, I did a whole show on that with the Welcome Home podcast, and I won't get into why the economics of that will never actually work out. But anyway, John, why don't you re-educate our listeners on your cruising creds and your cruising background and your Disney background, so folks know where you're coming from on that.
So if we go in my background, so I am gold for Disney Cruise Line. So I had been nothing but the Disney dream to get there. But then we did 2 cruises on the Wish last year. So we did the DVC cruise, the second one, and then we went and did a very maritime one in November as well on the Wish. I've been Disney World every year since December of 71. So, I guess 50 straight years of doing that.
Wow.
I'm a DVC member, have done Disneyland, done Aulani, and we're actually going and staying at Hilton Head in May, which will complete all the DVC resorts. And then, then they announced 2 more, right? Then they announced Disneyland and the Fort Wilderness Cabin. So I guess I have 2 more I'll have to put on the resume at some point.
But you have time. They're not opening quite yet. So you've got some time. Disneyland Hotel will be open sooner. The new cabins, it'll probably take some time before those are up and running. So you got plenty of time.
Well, and you've got the new Poly Tower that's going to come online as well. You technically stay at the Polynesian.
Well, if you stayed at Polynesian, right? I mean, it's not a new property. It's just a new tower.
Fair enough.
Yeah, which will be interesting because the regular Poly, right, it was just studios or the ones on the
bungalows.
The bungalows. So they needed some additional choices there. We've grown out of the studios. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, with those cruise creds in mind, we brought John on the show to do a little bit of a Norwegian Cruise Line versus Disney Cruise Line compare and contrast. We were supposed to go on a Norwegian Cruise Line sailing out of Seattle this summer. Actually, I think it was last summer, but I can't keep track of all of the COVID-related cancellations and rebookings, but we were supposed to do a Norwegian Cruise Line sailing to Alaska at some point, and we ended up converting that over to Disney Cruise Line and are now stuck constantly pushing that one out. But John, where did you go on Norwegian Cruise Line, and have you sailed Norwegian before?
We have not. So we actually went, there was a bunch of different families that went for spring break, and about, I think, 6 different families. One of them had done Norwegian a few times before. And it really just came down to let's try it and see, the benefits, the deals, the cost in that. And it made sense for the whole group. So it was a week long, Saturday to Saturday. We left Port Canaveral. And then our 4 ports were Puerto Plata in the Dominican Republic, St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands, Tortola in the British Virgin Islands, and then their private island, which is Great Stirrup Cay.
And which ship were you on?
The Escape.
And where does that one fall in terms of its age with Norwegian?
So Escape was a 2018 ship. Yeah, so not their most recent. I think there's a chance that one is going to be repositioned, and one of the larger ships is going to go to Port Canaveral, is what I had seen. But it was, it was a nice ship, still one of their larger ones. I mean, I would put it right in there, right, with the Dream and the Fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Cruise Critic website, and they say that it is 4,200 passengers, 1,700 crew. So yeah, I would put it up there with the Dream, the Fantasy, the Wish for sure. So you said the group dynamics here kind of dictated trying out Norwegian. Were you sort of excited to give it a try, or a little apprehensive? I don't know what you heard leading into your cruise about Norwegian.
Yeah, kind of both. I mean, our friends are, again, they're big believers in Norwegian. We took him on the Wish with us in November, and all I heard about was how much more they like Norwegian. So, so I didn't mind trying it. Going into it, I think a lot of the extras that came with it was worthwhile, especially for something to be a cruise of that length, of being a week. But I think there were some things that definitely hit, and some things that didn't. And at the end, I'll tell you, I think at the end of the day, I would rather have done 7 days on Disney.
Well, we can just stop the show right there. Let me put the outro music in. There you go. There's the front.
But there are some benefits, and again, it's going to fit for some people, right? Some people, I think, might like it better.
Yeah.
What kind of cabin did you get on board, John?
So we were in a club balcony room.
Okay.
So
and how does that compare to some, Disney Cruise Line has fairly limited sort of cabin style offerings? Where does it sort of fit in the Disney vernacular?
So we did the club balcony with a extended veranda. So I would consider that to be one of the family extended veranda staterooms on the Disney ship.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Now, does club or does the word club, as they use it, is that just a vernacular for the type of room, or does that correspond to any kind of concierge type status?
So it is some kind of status, and I wouldn't say that it's anything someone should pay extra for. We wanted it for we needed it because we have 4 in the family, so we needed it for the space. I always love the extended balcony. But it did give us a bottle of sparkling wine when we checked in. So that was already in the cabin. And then we got some different treats 2 or 3 days throughout the 7 days that a regular cabin wouldn't receive, like chocolate covered strawberries or some cookies and that. So that's about it on the club. I believe we had priority in that we were also able to book reservations for shows before regular cabins as well.
Oh, reservations for shows. So tell me what that is, because obviously we know from on Disney Cruise Line, you just show up to a show. There's no reservations. You have to show up early if you want a good seat. And there is a chance that, the theater does get pretty packed. But what does reservations for the shows entail?
So there was one Broadway type show on the cruise, and it did fill up as far as reservations. It was Choir of Men, which was a big British show. They brought it here on the boat. really good. I mean, I liked it. I thought that was a big win and a nice show, but that's one that you needed to make reservations for. There were some other things that you could have made reservations for, and we just said, hey, our friend said, it doesn't really fill up. Don't worry about it. We won't make reservations. Being that this cruise was filled up, I mean, it was all 4,200. There was some times where we probably needed some of those reservations.
Because this was a spring break schedule cruise, right? So we're talking high season, no matter what cruise line you're on, more, especially at a Port Canaveral. It's obviously a very busy cruise port, but really all of the ports in Florida, that's really high season for them.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, so let's rewind for 1 second here, John, and I want to ask about kind of the process leading up to the sailing, because we kind of skipped ahead to the sailing itself. How did that process compare to Disney, from booking online, which I'm guessing very few differences across the different, cruise lines, except for the fact that Disney is now sort of perpetually keeping itself like with only about 18 months of itineraries, as opposed to some of the other cruise lines that book out years. But that Disney process, that's, you book, and then you've got kind of the regimented windows that open up over time for activity and online check-in and that kind of stuff. Whereas some of the other cruise lines, it feels a little more relaxed and loose in terms of how you do things. How was Norwegian in terms of that experience of booking up until the time you actually set foot in the port to get on the boat?
So I actually thought that it was pretty close to Disney with that. So just to give you an idea, so when we booked, we had a discount on, I believe, the third and fourth person in our cabin. And then we were given the package of a free drink package, a limited Wi-Fi, 2 specialty dinings, and then $50 off any excursion for the first person.
Oh, wow.
So those were the extras that were given. And then the good news is we went through the process, right? They had lifted most of the COVID things, so we didn't have to test. So all that, we were kind of wondering where that was going to fall. So that kind of left everything out there. Dining, when you book the specialty dining, you do have a window where that happens. So our friends who have status with Norwegian, they booked those specialty dinings for us. Otherwise, we would have had to wait to do that. So that was one benefit. But again, to me, seems very similar to Disney, right? Everybody falls in line based upon their status for when they could book things.
Yep.
Same thing of, that wonderful get the early port time starting at midnight. So that wasn't a change either. And that was a process that, while I swear at Disney, every time when I'm up uploading things and trying to get that done and get back to bed before 1 or 1:30, this was no different. I mean, I want to say it took me, from midnight until probably 1:30 to get everything done.
Wow.
For that. So I really felt most of the process leading up to it was very similar to Disney.
Wow.
Interesting.
Now, what kinds of things did you need to book in advance? It sounds like a specialty dining is maybe one category. You said reservations for some shows as another category. I imagine shore excursions is a third category. Were there other things that you needed to book in advance, perhaps in a different than on Disney Cruise Line?
No, I think that's it. All of those were items that you could book in advance, and I think it made sense to be able to do that. So we had some of our other friends did not book their specialty dining in advance, and then when they were on the ship trying to do it, they were very limited to what was available and the times. So
interesting.
By not doing it ahead of time, they kind of missed out on being able to use those credits that they had. Shore excursion. The other thing that we were able to book ahead was the thermal suite. So
nice.
The equivalent of the rainforest room on Disney. So we were able to book that ahead of time, which we made sure that we did that.
Mhm. What about drink packages? Did you all book drink packages in advance, and if so, what did those include?
So the drink package was included as part of our package, and the drink package that we received was any beverage $15 or less. So if there was something more, so like we wanted to have an espresso martini, that was $18, we paid the $3.
It's just you pay the difference. Actually,
you only pay the difference.
That's pretty nice. Yeah, I kind of always assumed you just paid for it if it was above the limits, but that's nice to hear you just pay the difference. I assume that includes soda then as well, or
No. So that's the interesting part. So it does. So 2 adults, 2 children in our park. Mm-hmm. When even though they give you the drink package for free, you must, part of your cost is prepaying the gratuities for that.
Mm-hmm.
I believe for that week and for the cruise at 20%, our gratuities based upon what they charge for the drink package was like $500 and something for the 4 of us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the kids can't have the alcohol beverage. And when you really look online and do stuff, there's be some that, well, the kids, they get the drink package, the soda package out of it. And then there was other things that said they don't. So
interesting.
We paid a gratuity for 4 of us. And then we got on board and they're like, nope, the soda package isn't included for the children. That would be extra. And I said, well, I paid the gratuity for it. And they said, well, if you could show us where you paid it, we'll reimburse you those 2 gratuities because technically you shouldn't have paid for them, which I'm there.
Wow.
I didn't have access to be able to do that. Now, most of the times the kids were able to go up. Now, if they were with me, I got the soda because I had the drink package. They got it and I gave it to them. They were fine. Most, I'd say 50% of the time they were able to get it. 50% of the time they were told no.
Oh, interesting.
So
that's so weird. That's weird that so if you had been 4 adults, they would have had a free drink package, but because they were kids, they didn't, essentially. Correct. You would have had to pay extra for the soda, when the soda package presumably is of a lower value than the drink package that you had because it included alcohol. That makes no sense whatsoever. But that's actually really helpful to hear, just because if people are listening and you're booking on Norwegian, just something to know. If you have an included drink package, that is the $15 and under beverage package, it's not going to apply to your kids.
Yeah, and they have different. So we could have upgraded our beverage package. I thought it was too much to do it, but the upgraded beverage package includes all the top shelf liquors. So, and then I believe it takes it up to either $20 or $21. So all beverages at that price or less is included. But at $15, we said that was fine. And looking again, if there's plenty of vodkas, plenty of gins, scotch, everything included. We were even able to get some shots of Fireball, which is included in the drink package because it was under $15.
Yeah.
I guess how much of the pre-cruise add-on stuff, because I'll get to a question in a little bit about value, right? And some people will say, well, you pay a lot to get on Disney, but once you're on board, you got to pay for your drinks, like drink packages aside, you got to pay for
alcohol.
Your drinks.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, free soda, all 99% of the restaurants are included except for the adult dining upcharges. But there's a sense of like, well, when you start to add in all the little things that you prepay for on the other cruises, like you don't necessarily equal out to what you pay for Disney. But, it's eroding that kind of perception that the sticker price for the cruise is the same as the ultimate price for the cruise a little bit. And I'm just curious, how much of the stuff that you pre-bought or that was available to pre-buy did you feel like you had to do to make the cruise experience, good for you versus, was stuff that you bought and you thought, I didn't really need this on board, or looking at it, I don't think I'll ever need this. Like, what was the calculus for you on some of these pre-purchase cruise items?
So if I would have bought, so again, being that they gave us that package, right? Technically, if I would have bought it a la carte, yes, I would have probably paid for the same alcohol beverage package that we received. I would have done the thermal suite. The $50 credit for the first person on a shore excursion was right. We did one shore excursion. It really wasn't that big of a deal to be able to have that. Wi-Fi was terrible on the ship, and you didn't get any communication. And we can get through that if we kind of compare and contrast some things. I could talk about that in a second. So I would have did those two, and that would have been it. And I don't know if there was really anything else that you had to. The specialty dining, specialty dining, I probably might have paid for those, or even if I did that same cruise again, I might have purchased a couple more specialty dining nights.
Well, let's start with some of the compare contrast for a second. So let me start with one thing you never see on Disney are cruise fare sales, unless you are in a special category, right? They'll do sales for veterans or Florida residents, although they've paused those here recently for a little bit, but those kinds of things. Did you notice the price fluctuate on your Norwegian cruise after you purchased it? And could you call in and say, I want the new lower price for this cruise?
So you could have, but this one did not drop at all. So to give you just a difference, so I booked my cruise through Costco because I got back $200 and something cash card, and I think I used the Costco card, and I get 3% on travel back once a year from that. So I booked through there. My one friend books direct with Norwegian. With where they keep track of it, and they'll be able to, if something drops, rebook it for him and do all that. But this cruise had none of that. So, sold out cruise, spring break, there was no chance. But he did say in the past, there's been those periods of time where they've been able to, fares have dropped and they've been able to get a lower fare. I forget what the days out you are for Norwegian. I forget if it's 30 days or 60 days out that you would have to do it. Once you're within that window, if the price drops, then you're locked in.
Right. So the very last minute, probably that you can't take advantage of the very last minute deals, but they allow you to take advantage of some deals that may be 3 months out or 4 months out, something like that. That makes sense. That
makes sense, but it's a key difference. You're never going to really be able to do that with Disney Cruise Line, maybe in a rare scenario. What about so if I put up a 7-night cruise on Disney Cruise Line as against a Norwegian Cruise Line 7-night itinerary, like the one you sailed, what would you say I'm assuming the Norwegian cruise is going to be less as an initial starting point than the Disney cruise. Like how much less? Like, do you think it's 50% less, 75% less? Like what was the savings on the initial sticker price?
So when I originally looked, so this one was just over $5,000 for 4 of us for 7 nights. That same period of time for 7 night, which would have been on the Fantasy, was running anywhere depending on cabin. Like if we would have done the family extended veranda cabin, that would have been close to 11.
Yep. Right. That's what I would have guessed. All right. So a little over 50% in terms of the price difference.
Yep.
Let's 200%. You're meaning you mean?
Well, yeah. Well, yes. Yeah. It's half of or more than half of what you would pay on Disney. Let's fast forward here. I recently had the experience of checking in for a Royal Caribbean cruise that's coming up at the end of this month for me and my son, and was blown away by how fast the online check-in experience went. It was to the point where we had to scan a passport, and I was trying to adjust the camera to get to the passport before I could even do it. It had extracted all the information off the passport. And then I was I literally had one screen of information to fill out, and it was you're checked in. I was really? I feel like I need to go through a whole process here.
A question and answer, and tell them my mother's maiden name and my father's first pet. And
how are you getting to the port? How are you getting back? All this stuff, right? Did not have any of that. And so, John, I'm curious, how is the online check-in experience for Norwegian? And I'm assuming they have an app because every cruise line seems to have an app. So let me ask about that check-in experience. Were you able to do it through an app? And how was the app itself?
Their app is terrible. So I gotta say, it's really not a good app. And once we were on the boat, for whatever reason, we couldn't even get the app to work. for
Oh,
all 7
no.
days. The app never worked at all.
All right, so I think we have now identified where it is Disney Cruise Line must be getting their ideas for this stuff. But okay,
Yeah. And then my thing where I said it took me from midnight to like 1:30 to check in. I believe I was traveling. I was in a hotel room, and I'm trying to remember. Oh, yeah, I had photos saved of the kids' passports, of selfies of them. And then it was like it didn't accept one because my son had his glasses on, and we needed one with the glasses off. And I sat there and said, "This is the same as all my Disney frustration."
all right.
Well, and that's funny because I want our listeners to understand, like, John is not a novice at this, right? He has checked in for many Disney cruises. He also travels a lot for work. So he's probably often doing this from a hotel room. In fact, he's talking to us right now from a hotel room. So this is not like a unique scenario where he doesn't have his stuff together, right, John? I want people to understand this is obviously it's an issue like with Disney technology, an issue now apparently with Norwegian technology.
Yeah, so let's rewind for 1 second and let's just play this out. So I'm going to say, from what I heard you say, John, the booking experience itself sounds like a tie between Norwegian and Disney.
Yep.
Price, at least initial price. We'll get to the full value here in a second, but initial price, I think you're saying Norwegian would win as against Disney by a wide mile here.
Correct.
All right. And then online check-in sounds like is a wash, maybe a slight edge to Disney, but I would say from your description, it's a wash.
It's a wash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
There's no, I can't tell you a great experience I ever had checking in at Disney. So.
All right. So far, for those keeping score at home, we got Norwegian ahead slightly against Disney on price. All right. Let's get to the port experience, the boarding experience. We've had some, I think, mixed reactions to Disney's boarding process depending on where you are in the world. But overall, they do a pretty good job of a regimented boarding experience, keeping everything organized and moving. How did Norwegian fare for you in Port Canaveral?
I thought it was really good. So obviously their terminal is not as nice as Disney's terminal. I think theirs is very nice, but I thought the check-in process was extremely smooth. So we had I believe a port arrival time. So again, I live in St. Augustine. It's 2 hours from myself to get to Port Canaveral. I think we left at close to 7:30 a.m. because we had like a 9:30 a.m. Terminal arrival time. And we did that, no problem, got checked in with no problem, and then waited. We were probably called maybe somewhere between 10:30 and 11 to board. And the boarding process was fine. That was smooth where, sometimes Disney, it doesn't matter what number you are, everybody crowds the area to try and get on the ship, and you have to kind of maneuver through all that. This was pretty organized. So, it didn't have that at all. So it was pretty smooth. Now, what's interesting is, right, Disney, you board, they announce your name, and you walk right onto the ship. Norwegian was you went up and down these gateways, and then you're walking on the outside of the ship before you go in a different door. And there is no announcement of the Marone family or anything. It was, hey, welcome aboard. And that was about it. So it was pretty smooth. I'll give that one a tie because I've never really had problems at all boarding with Disney.
Yeah.
All right. Well, first impressions of the ship, John, after you got on, you've been on the Disney ships. What was your first impression of the Norwegian ship?
It was nice. It was different. So walking through, it's more of what you would consider a cruise ship. So, to me, sometimes you get on Disney and there is that wow factor for it. It's a little bit more upscale. Norwegian, to me, maybe a little bit less upscale than Disney, but still very impressive in the layout. I was pleased with the cleanliness of the ship. So very nice there. But I mean, Disney to me is just a notch nicer in how it's set up.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so point to Disney on first impressions. It sounds like.
Yep.
All right. I'm keeping score in my notebook here, so that when we get to the end, we can declare the winner.
I'm curious about casino, because obviously we have to talk about the fact that there is a casino, because Disney ships don't have a casino. We hear mixed reviews of casinos on other ships. They tend to be smoking areas, which is a turnoff to a lot of people. And they also tend to be, I think, slot machine heavy, which is also a turnoff to a lot of people. But I'm curious about Norwegian's casino, what you thought of it, if you spent any time in it, that sort of a thing.
We did. So we probably spent less time in it than we probably thought we were going to. First impression right away was we were surprised that they allowed smoking. So
right.
That was interesting. And also because of where the casino is. So the casino is midship and it's not closed in.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if you were on the floor below, floor above, you weren't smelling smoke, but certain areas of the casino you were. I thought it was pretty well spaced out and plenty of table games. So while they did have the slot machines, they weren't all packed in. They were spread out. Even they were down the hallway as well. Mm-hmm. So the walkway where you would walk from midship to, aft, there were slot machines there as well. But plenty of table games for that. And I thought it was good. It didn't detract from the cruise at all. And then again, we probably used it 2 nights out of the whole stay. And if it wasn't there, we wouldn't have missed it. But, the 2 nights we were there, we had fun giving them money.
Now, when walking around the ship, is it an area that kids have to walk through, or is it an area that can sort of be avoided? I know it's different on different ships, of course, but I'm always curious because obviously casinos are generally on land. Well, on land, they are always in the United States, 21 and older establishments. In other countries, they might be, 18 and older. But I'm curious about on the ship, whether or not it was an area that, anyone could walk through, or if it was sort of off the beaten path.
Nope, anybody could walk through. So, we were sitting playing one night and the kids came and found us and stood by us where, right, in Vegas, they would have got tossed out of that. There was no big deal. Also, there was even some arcade games, like right at the front of the casino area. So like some of those Pop-A-Shop basketball games. They had 2 little bowling alley lanes that were right there, as well as a couple video games. So they had another self-enclosed arcade up towards the aft of the ship, but there was still a couple of arcade games right there by the casino as well.
So let me ask the question then. Casino or no casino? Casino or no casino? Because I think that's the question, right? Does the casino make the cruise better, or does the casino degrade the cruise a little bit? In which case, Disney would be the better option.
Yeah, it doesn't degrade it. To me, if somebody wants to use it, great. My wife and I were married in Vegas. We enjoy casinos. It's fun to do every now and then. So I'm fine with it. But again, it's not huge and it didn't take away from anything. So you don't say, well, if the casino wasn't there, what would be in its place? Well, maybe some stores, right? It wasn't anything, right? I even look at that at Disney. If there was a small area that had a casino, what are you taking away? You're really not taking anything away.
So I'm going to put the point in the tie column then, because it's okay to have one, okay to not have one.
Yeah, see, and I disagree, Brian. I actually think you have to put it in the positive column because John spent 2 nights playing in the casino. So I feel like...
All right. I've added it to the Norwegian column. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. All right. We talked a little bit about the cabin that you got, John, but we didn't ask, what did you think of the cabin? And, the key question for a Disney cruiser is going to be, does it have a split bathroom? Right. And so I'm curious about the split bathroom and then what your overall impressions of the cabin were as against what you've experienced on Disney.
So you're going to have to do a good job of figuring out who wins this one, because no, it is not a split bathroom. So Disney gets the advantage on bathroom there. The bathroom would be the size, right? It was fine. It had a nice shower in there, the toilet, double sink. Now, not all the cabins have that, but this club level cabin had double sink, which was wonderful. So the bathroom was fine. I know it wasn't split, but it was still A-okay. I think the overall cabin was better. And the reason, for one simple reason, when you walk in the cabin, you open the door, the bathroom's immediately on your left. Fine. But then as you continue to walk into the room, the very first thing after the bathroom is the living area, which is the couch, which then would fold out to the bed. And then we had the bunk bed pull out from the ceiling. Then there's the king bed and then the door to the balcony. So you were able to walk around that cabin. So with Disney having that big bed first, where it's always trying to scoot by it to get past it, to get to where the couch is or that, this, I liked it much better. So I think the layout of the room I like better. I'd rather have the split bathroom, but I like the layout of the room better.
Well, and a key mention there, you said king bed, which very few Disney Cruise Line rooms have. Was it a true king-size bed?
Yeah, it could be split to two twins, but it was a king, yeah.
Yeah,
So
well, that's, I mean,
Yep.
Disney's only a queen, so.
Yep.
All right, I'm giving that one to Norwegian, I think, based on John's description,
I agree with you, Brian. I think that while the bathroom is better, obviously, on Disney, your description of the bathroom is, it's a good size. It's just not the split bathroom, but everything else goes for Norwegian. So I'm with you, Brian.
Well, let's talk about an area of lots of use on board a Disney ship, which is the pool deck. You're on a Caribbean cruise, so it should be at least some decent weather, although I know for spring break for us, it was a little rough sailing out there, and I don't know how the weather held up for your 7-night. But what did you think about the pool deck on board? How'd that go?
We did not have the rough sailing that you had. So our waters were pretty calm. But for me, being Florida, I find the water to still be too cold in March in the Caribbean. So the kids don't have a problem getting in there. I do.
You Floridians and your cold blood.
It's true. The pool deck's fine. I like it or not. I like the way that the Wish is laid out for the pools. I don't mind that they're small. I like that there's a bunch of them. I like the different levels. I like the adult in the back and all that. I think overall, and we did not do a lot of the pool deck, but it's more of one big pool, kind of like how, to me, the dream is, and that of that one big pool. And then they did have the adult pool and everything as well, which was fine. So I don't, the pool deck's fine, good bars around there on the outside. All the kids' activities are in the back. Now, I will say, like, the water play area for the kids is much larger than, especially for the little ones. So, if I think about the Wish or the Dream, right, the water play area is usually that smaller, self-contained area, and this way the little ones don't escape from it.
Yep, like Nemo's, the Nemo thing on the Dream or the Fantasy, or the Toy Story themed one on the Wish. Yeah.
Yep. So I think what they call the Aqua Park, or that, much larger and much more impressive for the kids, including the water slides as well, than what Disney has. So the adult pool wise, it's a wash, or I like Disney a little bit better. But for the kids, I think there was actually more, because so much is put around, right? The Aqua Duck or the Aqua Mouse, a little bit less on the pools. Here, I think having that one area was much nicer.
Wow. All right. Another score for Norwegian.
All right. It's I mean, they're pulling away here, Sam. It's not
I know.
it's not close at this point.
But we haven't hit some really important categories, Brian. And I want to, can I jump to one, which is I want to know onboard activities. Let's talk daytime activities. We're not going to talk about shows and nighttime activities yet. But, on the Disney ships, we know we've got lots of trivia going on. We've got lots of family game shows. We've got character meet and greets. Of course, both
I want to add in here, Sam, things like, because on activities on other ships can get really far afield too, because you're talking about like some ships have bumper cars and like other things. So I want to lump it all in. Yeah, I want to lump it all in. John, how are the onboard activities? Yeah,
so amenities, onboard activities, daytime.
Okay, so they have trivia and they have all those types of things. Here's where I didn't like it. So usually on Disney, if you're doing most of that daytime trivia, right on the Wish, it's in Luna. On the Dream, it's in one of the bars. So it's contained, right? It's you. Mm-hmm. You want to go, you go, and that's it. So they had the regular stuff. They had bingo and they had everything there during the daytime. So I don't think there's anything missing. What was unique to me, though, is their stage is right in the middle of the center of the ship. So there's no walls. Seating is kind of folding chairs put out. On one side of it is the guest relations desk, as well as the port excursion desk. Behind it is a bar and then a little coffee shop. So it's wide open. So I know we're talking about daytime, but most all the trivia, the activity, the dollar or no dollar, all that they did takes place right there. So it could get pretty crowded. But also at night, if you think about like the newlywed game and the stuff like that they do, that's wide open. So anybody walking by can hear that, see that, kids, the whole ball of wax. So I just thought that was a unique place in that they didn't use, any other facility to be able to have some of those items. Everything took place in that main lobby area.
And did they have any of the amenities on board, John, like, wave riders and water slides and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so this one has a ropes course, which is actually a pretty big ropes course. They had the miniature golf. They had the aqua park. And those are probably the big ones. So this one didn't have the go-karts or the flow rider or that. So I know the newer ships have that. So that's what they had.
All right.
So who would you give the point here to, John, in terms of the overall kind of onboard activity experience?
So on that, I think on Disney for that. So I think there's a lot that goes into it. So because again, if we're talking about activities, I think you have to lump in Kids Club, right? Because of their activities, especially if we're counting the ropes course and all that. Like my kids on the Wish, they love the new gym area. Mm-hmm. Whether it's the Incredibles course or whether my son could go in there and play basketball. So they had basketball as well that was outside. So they had all that, all the normal stuff. But if you want to get into the Kids Club, being one of the activities, I think that is you could almost give Disney 2 checks for that one over Norwegian.
I was going to ask you that as a separate category because I think that Kids Club is a separate category.
I agree.
But I think but you've given the daytime activity stuff to Disney 1 check. So, but tell us what's the differentiator here with the Kids Club? Because you have 2 kids.
Yep.
And what was their, how old are they again?
Twins who are 12.
Okay.
The Kids Club on the Norwegian is ages 3 to 12.
Okay.
So we took them to go see it, to check them in, get the wristband, which is how they do it, and just see it. At the time we were checking them in, there was families checking in children who were pretty much 3 who were just having meltdowns. just
Oh, yeah.
screaming, just everything. And then when you looked around their kids club, it's like, well, there's not much separation here, right? It's kind of more of one big room when you go through it. And the only thing that they're looking at is, I don't want to spend my time in the same room as a 3-year-old.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, though, Disney does also, their kids club, the Oceaneer Club and Oceaneer Lab are also 3 to 12, but then they have the Tween Club, which starts at age 11, and that goes 11 to 14, and then the Teen Club is, I think, 14 through 17. So they had 2 choices on Disney, is that right? They can go to the Oceaneer Club or Lab if they want to do those kinds of activities, but they also can go to the Tween Club.
Which they love the Tween Club on the Wish, which that's not an option. So there is a Teen Club here. They were too young to be able to do it. So
they have nothing then.
So they're in the 3 to the 12, nothing for the tweens. So when they went and saw it, and then there were some different things. So if you drop them off, they must stay a minimum of 2 hours unless you're coming to check them out. So, on Disney, we let them check themselves in and out.
Right.
All right. We know where they are. They're contained, and they can text us. We know where we are, where they are. Here, if they were to check themselves in and out, then when they went in, it was a minimum 2 hours before they could check themselves out.
That doesn't make any sense. I wonder why they do that. And then if you know, please tell us, but I have another question, which is the kids club an extra cost, or is it included like on Disney?
Yeah, it is included. So it's not an extra cost. And I guess the only thing I could think of where they try and do it is so kids aren't just in and out. Right. If they're going to be in there, they're going to be in there. So that turned them off. So they went once during the whole trip. That was all that they went in there. And on that, they asked one of us to check them out, right? All their friends. So they spent the majority of their time on the ship playing basketball, going in the arcade. Now, the arcade is a separate cost. So there's 2 things on the arcade. So you pay a flat fee. I believe it was $79 for the cruise. And you can play all the games that don't give tokens.
Okay.
Any of the games that give tokens are an extra charge.
I assume that's because those have prizes.
Correct.
The tokens lead to prizes. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, we're giving Kids Club to Disney then, it sounds like.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. Let's go to shore excursions here. Did you take any shore excursions on Norwegian, and what did you think of the offerings that were available? Better or the same as Disney?
Yeah, I think overall the same as Disney when you look at the shore excursions, especially for the places they go. I think it's pretty consistent for that. Our first stop being the Dominican Republic, we just went and walked. There was a nice area there in Puerto Plata, so we were able to. They have these pool beach clubs, so you can go to the beach club, grab some chairs, listen to music, get some drinks, do whatever. So we did that for a little bit, and then we went and grabbed a taxi and went into town. And the neat thing about the taxi there, so this wasn't something that we booked through the cruise. We just did it while we were there. And the good thing is the taxi driver, when he parked the car, he got out, was your tour guide, and took us around to see the different sites. So that was fine. I don't, not much else. Even people that we talked to who did shore excursions there wasn't anything that I felt like, that we missed out. St. Thomas, the reason we didn't is my wife's twin sister and family lives in St. Thomas. So they came and met us, and we did Megan's Bay and spent the afternoon there with them, which plenty of people did that as part of their tour anyway. for the British Virgin Islands and Tortola, we did pay for the tour. And so the good and bad for this. So we did a 45-minute catamaran ride from Tortola to Jost Van Dyke.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Jost Van Dyke, to me, beautiful. If you ever do the Virgin Islands, find a way to get there. It is one of the most beautiful areas I've ever seen. So I know you guys have talked about Magens Bay being one of the nicest places. I will take this place over Magens Bay.
That's what we've been hearing. So we've been to Tortola once or twice on like our first couple of cruises with Disney. It's been quite a while though. And then we've more recently heard of Jost Van Dyke and have heard, as you have said, very similar reviews that it is amazing, beautiful, it's just an awesome place and that we have to go next time we go to Tortola. So we will, at some point, we'll get back to Tortola and head there, but it sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was great. Now, the only thing that I'll say is this. Our port stay in Tortola was 7 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Oh, that's too short.
Too short considering it's a 45-minute catamaran ride there and back.
Right.
So we didn't have a lot of time to sit there and enjoy the beach, ride a couple hours, and then next thing you know, you're right back on the catamaran back. So I thought that was that. Even I think St. Thomas was like 11 to 5.
Those are short.
Yeah, Puerto Plata was, I think, a full like 9 to 4, and their private island was like 9 to 4. So shore excursions, to me, a wash. You can do the same for any cruise line that comes in. So
I think that's a great segue to the private island question, right? We've got obviously Castaway Cay, and I'm forgetting the name. You said it earlier on the
Stingray something, I think, or
Stingray.
Great Stirrup Cay. Yeah,
Great Stirrup Cay. Okay, so Castaway Cay. I'm going to say it right. So Castaway Cay versus Great Stirrup, and I'm going to call it Cay, even though I don't care that NCL calls it Cay.
So I'm going to pause you for 1 second, Sam. I did take some time earlier this week to look up the word C-A-Y in Merriam-Webster's dictionary, and it does afford both pronunciations. So
I know. I just like to say it the way the Bahamians do. But John, I want to hear, tell us what maybe the differences are between Stirrup and Castaway, and who's got the better private island.
So again, going back, if anybody's listened to me before, I have a vacation house that is named Castaway Cottage, named after Castaway Cay or Cay. And so it has a deep, deep place in my heart. I think that Disney, where I like it, is there's all the things you can do there. Absolutely. So you can just sit on the beach and do nothing, but at least they have the two different things in the water that the kids could do, right? They could do the slides on the one side, and then they had the ropes that they could climb on the other one. That was missing from Great Stirrup Cay. So
interesting.
They did have some things that you can do that are extra. So like you can zip line. Well, that's an extra charge. You can, they have the snorkeling as well. But to me, they were missing the activities that the kids can do out in the water. So that to me is probably the only thing to me that was a big difference. The food, almost identical, right? Go get your lunchtime barbecue. If you would have said, "Here's the food," and blindfolded me on the way there, I wouldn't have been able to tell you what one I was at. Right? It was identical. So I think to me, where Castaway Cay gets it is really on just having a little bit more for the kids to do.
Interesting. So no water park type feature like we hear about it, like Royal Caribbean has.
Now, here's the other thing which really tilts it in Disney's favor. Great Stirrup Cay is a tender island.
No.
Yeah.
You have to book your time to get on a tender to go to their private island. Now, their private island is literally right next to Royal Caribbeans, which is whatever they call that. Is that Coco?
Perfect day at Coco
Perfect
Cay.
day at Coco Cay. So sitting on the beach,
you can see it,
Great
right?
Stirrup Key, I could see their boat docked on their private island right next to us, while I see our tenders going back and forth.
Right. So that kind of adds a little, it's like the knife right in the, just twisted a little bit there when you have to see it right across the way. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was another thing where to be able to book the tender, it's like 24 hours in advance. And they had these touch screens at different places in the lobby by the elevator bank. So you can book your tender there, or you can do it at the guest relations desk. If you miss that, your time just gets later and later and later. So like we had an early tender time. Maybe it was 8:30 or something. It was one of the first ones. I think we were at tender 2. Some of our other friends forgot to do it, and they were at tender time like 12 o'clock. Now, if they showed up, they were fine. Probably anytime after, 9:30, 10, it wasn't that big of a deal. But
after the morning rush.
Yeah. But again, another thing that you had to pay attention to of booking that tender to be able to get to the island.
Well, point to Disney. The scoring here, which I will not reveal yet, is interesting. All right, let's head back on board, and we have to talk about the shows.
Yes.
So
I was waiting.
Well, I always save food for last. I've got a couple more questions here, but let's talk about the shows. Who's going to win the day on shows here, John?
Disney. So again, their one show, right, The Choir of Man, was really good show.
Mm-hmm.
Enjoyable. That one I really liked, and I'll take that up against any of the Disney ones, right? Which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
That was the one, again, looking at it for the week. That show went on twice, but that was it. So now you had the other days to fill up.
Right.
They had a magician. To me, it was okay, but also it was supposed to be somewhat of a family show, and he was pretty inappropriate.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah, which was interesting, and he overall wasn't that good. He failed on a lot of his tricks.
Really? Wow. Because that's odd, because I would say, like, on Disney, even the variety act performers that they have, like the ventriloquist, the magician, juggler, hypnotist, they are really at the top of their game, I would say. I wouldn't say I've loved every single performer I've seen on Disney. That would be a lie. But I will say I can't think of one that I saw that was really bad or that messed up multiple tricks or anything like that. And most of the performers I would say, of a really high quality.
Yeah. So that was it. The other nights they had like an Elton John tribute. They had a tribute to some other bands, and it wasn't that good. They have a supper club, which would be considered one of your regular dining. And the supper club, we went in it one night because it was doing, I forget what, maybe it was disco songs or something, or R&B. And we lasted about 3 songs and left. It was,
wow.
It wasn't that good. They had another. So Howl at the Moon is one of the places on the ship, right? Dueling pianos.
Yeah. There's one in Baltimore where I went to, in downtown Baltimore. I went to college in Baltimore, and we had a Howl at the Moon bar in downtown, and it was a great dueling piano bar. It
needed a bigger location. So this would be something that people would get in there, save the seats, and we were never able to get in there. So it was probably a fun show, but it was packed. Right? People would go grab their seats hours before the show, and that was it. They had another one, which was actually good. It was like an 80s band. The only reason I say it was good is we were able to listen to them and see it on a TV outside the actual club they were playing in, because that was packed as well. So, and that was one where, at least an hour ahead, there was a line to be able to get into that show. So, I think it was a combination of the ship being crowded, but 2, I think it lacked on overall entertainment. So if something was good, it just people flocked to it and grabbed it, and it wasn't hard to get in to see the magician, but it was difficult to get in to see the other stuff. So I wasn't overly impressed with the entertainment.
All right. Point Disney on entertainment. Would that include your discussion there at the end, John? I'm wondering, same on nightlife?
Yeah, so it's a mix. So like I like the nightlife a little bit more on like the Dream than I did the Wish. Because again, to me in the Wish, right, inside the one bar is usually just the piano player. So I mean that's not very rousing. And then in the Bayou, right, it's usually the three people who are playing. And while it's nice, it's not what you would consider as much. So, somewhat the entertainment on the Wish, I think the shows are good. I think the nightlife part of the entertainment is a little lacking compared to the other ones. And here I'll kind of say the same thing. I think the nightlife was a little lacking.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we will leave it as a tie then on that one.
I would give it to Disney because while I think John is essentially saying the Wish and Norwegian are probably equal, but the other ships on Disney are better. I think, as you've described, John, on the Dream, the Fantasy, and even on the Wonder and the Magic, you've got this sort of adult district area. They call it the district on the Dream. They call it Europa on the Fantasy. And they call it After Hours on the Magic and the Wonder. And it does have a nice adult after hours kind of atmosphere. I agree with you on the Wish. That's probably my least favorite of the adult nightlife, except for the Rose Bar, which is fantastic. But I digress.
Sure.
I think the edge you're giving to the Disney, but only by a smidge.
I will agree there.
All right. I will add a point to the Disney column. All right. Okay, we gotta. All right, as we come into the home stretch here, we gotta talk about food. So, restaurant offerings, food quality. What did you think, John? Norwegian versus Disney.
So, I like Disney a little better, just a touch. My wife liked Norwegian better. So,
interesting.
Here's what I'll say. On Norwegian, there were 3 dining rooms that are included, right? They're not extra. So it's Taste, Savor, and the Manhattan Room. They all have the same menu. Now, what I've found during this is when you open up their menu, there's 2 sides to it. The left side of the menu, the right side. The left side never changes. It's the same every single night. The right side has a little less items on it, but it does change from day to day. But it wasn't anything that kind of blew you away. To me, you had those. The buffet is open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And the buffet did change every single night. So I'll give an advantage there to Norwegian on having at least that available. Because one thing with Norwegian, what they say is, right, you don't have to book a time to eat, right? Eat whenever you want, as long as it's before 10 o'clock, is pretty much what you find. They had one restaurant that was open 24 hours, but everything else you had until 10 o'clock and that was it. So good there. They're upscale restaurants. I think they try and drive you to those. They try and drive you to those upscale restaurants. So we did 2 of them, which is what we received the free credits for. So we did the Brazilian steakhouse and we did the French restaurant, and both were very good. I think the Brazilian steakhouse was really good for what it was. Just a regular all you can eat, right? They bring the meats out to you, and that I thought it was very good. The kids loved it. The salad bar with it was good. So not much different than a Fogo de Chao or a Texas de Brazil on a cruise ship. That was good. I thought the French restaurant was good. The one thing that I will say is I think sometimes the Disney meals might be a little bit more upscale. So what am I always going to find on the buffet of the Disney ships? I'm going to find the snow crab the stone crab claws. I'm going to find
Right.
the peel and eat shrimp. There was shrimp on the buffet when we got on the boat on Norwegian, and then never saw it again for the most part the rest of the trip.
Yep.
You never saw lobster in any form on the menu unless you did one of the extra restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think the regular restaurants, you got your fish, your chicken, your pasta, your steak, and all that. But I think they were more, right, it's a generic type thing. If you want to have the more indulgent things, you're going to have to pay for it. Mm-hmm. And I give that, I think sometimes to me on Disney that's an advantage because I think their menus can be a little bit more upscale in the dining rooms than this was.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, just having some of that higher level food included is a bonus, even if it means you don't have as many dining options on board, which is, I think, one of the advantages you've pointed out that Norwegian has. And
so, I mean, I think one of the things, and it's no different where my wife and I talked about, she liked the fact that we weren't set for 7 straight days of dining at 5:30 or 8:15, right?
Right.
But yeah, for 7
I can
straight
understand
days,
that.
But for 7 straight days, I think we ate at the same time every night. Right? I think that's one of the things is it wasn't like, well, one night we ate at 5 and the next night we ate at 9, and it worked out perfect.
Right.
I think there was there, but I also think there were times where if the sit down restaurants were busy or had a wait, you ended up at the buffet, which wasn't always bad, but you knew it was there. So we probably had dinner at the buffet a few more times than I thought we would have.
Mm-hmm. Now, I think this is a great segue to the service question, which I know is the next spot that Brian is wanting to talk about, because it really ties nicely in with dinner. On Disney Cruise Line, you always have the same wait staff. And I'm going to talk overall service, but wait staff is a big part of that service component, as we all know, at least on Disney, because you've got the same people every night. When you are doing, I'll call it anytime dining, I know different cruise lines call it different things, but when you're doing an anytime dining arrangement on another cruise line, you are not going to have the same servers, particularly, even if you're in the same dining room every night. John, I'm wondering what you thought of the whole service experience on Norwegian, both on the wait staff side, but also in just general with, crew in all of the places on the ship.
So to give you an idea on cabins, Disney gets an advantage on cabins. So Norwegian just recently, like right before we went on the cruise, made an announcement that they had cut staff on their cruise ships. Oof. Right. That again, cost savings or whatever, and cut some staff. So because of that, there is no chocolates on your bed at night, nor do they make animals out of your towels.
Oh, that makes me so sad.
So it was, we'll clean your cabin once a day. That is it. So not as much there with the cabins. And then I think on the wait staff, even though it wasn't the same person every time, it was hit or miss. I mean, I think some of them were just excellent, and then there were some that were misses. We've had some misses. I think on last cruise on the Wish, I think that the service was okay. It wasn't great. I think our biggest complaint on the Wish recently has been when we've sat down to dinners, we've had to ask for a drink menu almost every single time. And if our glass is empty, we've had to ask for another, which usually they'd be right on top of that. So I've found that to be a little bit lacking as well. Here, hit or miss as well. Some were good, some weren't. So I think overall, I think it's a wash on that. Again, Disney is excellent service, but I will say our last couple times, it hasn't been the same level as what we were pre-COVID. That I'll say, but cabin wise, Disney wins by a good mile there.
Interesting. I would have to agree with you. We've had not quite as good service in our wait staff on the Wish as well. And I don't know if it's the staff or if it's just in part the arrangement of where the kitchen is, and it seems like food takes longer to come out on the Wish. And maybe that's what hurts them in getting your drinks and getting you extra bread. And we've had very friendly wait staff, but yeah. Anyway.
All right. So I want to make sure I'm keeping track here. So we gave point to Disney on food. Is that correct?
Yes.
And It sounds like we're giving. Well, who's getting the point on service? I'm
Disney.
Well, he said it was because he said it's a wash
because
on
of the cabin.
Right. He said it's a wash on wait staff, but the service on the steward, the cabin steward makes the difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then I have one final question, which is the overall value for the cruise. So, John, let me put it to you this way. You said up front, comparable cruise on Disney would have been close to $11,000. And this cruise was, $5,000. Which one would have held the value better in your estimation?
So I look at it as being 5,000, and then what we spent on board was only an extra couple $100, like $200.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been for 7 nights on Disney with drinks and everything would have been at least another 1,000.
Right.
So I think the value on Norwegian, they're going to win that. I mean, I think if somebody's looking to do a good cruise and they know what they're getting going into it, I think Norwegian has good value.
Wow.
All right.
Well, now you've got to help me here, John, because at the beginning of this show, you kind of spoiled the whole thing for us in saying that if you were going to go again on a 7-night cruise, you would choose Disney, right, over Norwegian. So help us, or really help our listeners understand why that decision, if you think the value was so good on Norwegian, which it sounds like it was. And I'm not keeping score, but I think Brian will reveal. I think actually Norwegian probably squeaked out a win here on the standings.
You would be wrong.
Okay.
So I could give Norwegian 2 more points here that we didn't talk about.
All right.
One, and I'll be quick on these. Norwegian still does a paper navigator. I'm giving them a point for that.
All right.
Disney's getting a point because Disney's communication online works. We could text with the kids on iMessage. Right. The app works. Norwegian, we couldn't text with the kids. It was a disaster. It was a horrible experience of trying to find them, figure out where it was that we never had on Disney before. The second thing I'll give this, the thermal suite on Norwegian, much better than the rainforest room on Disney.
I believe that.
All right. So I gave Norwegian an extra point for a printed navigator. I slid a point over to the Disney column for onboard communication, and then an extra point to Norwegian for the thermal suite. So,
we didn't say internet. You did say internet was terrible on Norwegian.
Yeah. So if you want to put that in communication, that's fine. But otherwise,
I've already kind of awarded that one, Sam, already.
All right, fair enough.
So I think we are done with the scoring here. I know you're trying to find any other category. Characters on board, who wins?
No, that we included that. We included that in entertainment. Okay,
all right.
Yeah.
So look, let me get to the final score here, and someone at home can keep me honest because I'm a little worried that I lost track and may have awarded an extra point in the Disney column. So this could be a tie. But if it's not a tie, Disney has squeaked out a 1-point victory over Norwegian with a total score. So Disney would have a total score of 14, and Norwegian would have actually more than 1 point. Let me say that again. So if I've done my math correctly, the final score would be 14 points for Disney and 12 points for Norwegian. So they've squeaked out a 2-point win. If my math is correct, I may have ascribed an extra point to Disney somewhere along the way. So it may be a 1-point win, but at worst it is a complete tie. So I think that is a Disney win based on my math. And there you go. That's why John would go on a 7-night cruise with Disney, because it wins out overall.
That's right. It does. Though I
your
will
answer?
say this. I will say this, and I'll ask you guys this question. I think the Wish is not a repeatable cruise. I've enjoyed it, but I don't know if I could do it again. And here's why. Dining. The Frozen show is not changing. I've seen it twice. I don't need to see it a third time.
Mm-hmm.
The Marvel restaurant. It doesn't change. So I knew the jokes, right? I saw them the first time. I knew them the second time. It's not going to be anything interesting the third. It's just a meal.
Mm-hmm.
And so, right, 1923 is just overall a good restaurant. I think that the Wish, while it's a nice cruise, is not repeatable.
So I am going to agree and disagree. And, I will agree with you. I think the shows in Marvel and Arendelle are not quite as repeatable as the other dining experiences on the other Disney ships. However, now having seen, I think each of the shows 3 times, because technically Brian and I have been on the Wish 4 times, 4 separate cruise itineraries, although of course back to back in both sets of them. And we're going on 2 more times in August, another back to back. I will say I do think I'm not itching to book more cruises on the Wish, so I will agree with you there. But I do still really like the food on the Wish. So even though I could sort of take or leave the show experience, I will say that the show in Marvel changed between our first couple sailings and our most recent sailing. We actually liked the version on the maiden voyage the best. But regardless, I still think the food is fantastic. And I don't mind seeing the Arendelle show more than once. It is a little loud, but I enjoy it and I enjoy the food. So I'm okay with less sort of repeatable dinner shows because I think the quality of the food is just so much better than on the other ships on the whole. That doesn't mean just the dining rooms, but because that pool deck food is just a huge win, even the pizza is better. And I know that sounds crazy, but it is freshly made crust. And so it's much, much better. So yeah, I agree with you. It's a less repeatable itinerary. It is heavily first-time cruisers, which is a different crowd. And even the 3-night crowd is different from the 4-night crowd. The 4-night crowd, people are trying to squeeze in a 7-night cruise in 4 nights. So they're trying to go to everything. So the spaces are really crowded. It's actually in some ways worse than the 3-night cruise in that respect. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I agree and disagree with you there, John. I would rather cruise on one of the other ships. I think now that I've sailed on her 4 times, I think I would say if I'm going to pick a ship to sail on, I don't think I'm itching to go on the Wish, even though that's actually where we're going on our next 3 cruises, maybe. We booked too many Wish cruises right after the Maiden. We were really excited. We had a great time on the Maiden, the DVC charter. Still love her. Think her food is the best. But yeah, I'd probably skew towards one of the other 4. Brian, what about you?
I agree with what you said. We'll probably have to cut this discussion out of the show anyway, so I'm going to skip it. But I will gladly talk offline about it. All right. Well, with that, so Sam, are we doing a rapid fire round here?
No, because we already did. We kind of did it through. I would normally do a compare contrast rapid fire.
All right. Let me wrap us up then. Let me do that.
Okay.
All right. Well, after that discussion and a eke of a win on the Disney Cruise Line side of things, let me just wrap us up by saying, John, is there anything that you wanted to share about your experience on Norwegian that we didn't get to in the show?
No, I think that we got it all. I think we covered it, and I'm surprised that was 14-12, but very close.
Like I said,
very close.
I'm doing what I like to call island math. It's close. It's close math, not scientific. And I'm sure someone will correct me by listening to the show and rescoring it and telling me that Norwegian actually eked out a win if that happens. So, all right. So, John, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience about Norwegian Cruise Line. We love doing these shows to understand what the other offerings are like out there, and just so appreciate you coming on and sharing your experience with us. So, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you very much for having me.